The Paula Show is on. The Paula Show. Come on, one and all. I extend an invitation to the Paula Show. Join in the conversation. Transforming behavior, recognizing our savior, overcoming hurdles, achieving dreams. Together we can succeed.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to season 16 of The Paula Show. Tonight, my guest is Dr. Colin Greene, and he's the principal of the Princess Margaret Secondary School. What is he bringing to The Paula Show tonight? Great ideas, creativity, innovation. We'll be speaking about education. We'll be speaking about sports. And he has so many experiences that he's going to share with us. But it's all good. He has a good heart. And the students and the PMS and the parents, they love him. They believe in him. And that is what I would like for all the educators in Antigua and Barbuda. Stay with us on The Paula Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Thank you for staying with us on The Paula Show. Remember to watch The Paula Show via CTV Channel 2 on Tuesday nights at 9 and Sundays at 1 in the afternoon. The Paula Show inspires, entertains, and transforms behavior. Like me on Facebook, The Paula Show. And please watch The Paula Show programs via YouTube at The Paula Show TV. Tonight, I'm highly excited. My friend Dr. Colin Greene is here. So I know that all night long, it's energy on set at The Paula Show. My friend.
Hey, good night.
Welcome to The Paula Show once
Always
more.
always my pleasure.
I want to start by asking you, how many years have you been at the Princess Margaret School?
This is my 19th year at the Princess Margaret School.
And how many years in the teaching?
I've been teaching for 35 years. I've spent 21 of those years as a school administrator.
Mr. Greene, 35 years in the education system. You're dating yourself. You sound like a dinosaur. You're about 150.
Well, somewhere in that region.
All right. If you were to describe a memorable account, something that the children at PMS, Princess Margaret School, did for you, what would be that account?
Well, I think there would be a lot of little things that children do.
I want a big one.
To show their appreciation. It's the graduating class of 2019.
Okay.
They got an opportunity at the graduation because they planned behind my back to make this presentation. And at the ceremony, we normally do not allow individual gifts. I don't know, the deputy principal went behind my back, and I believe my wife had something to do with it. And they organized.
Those wives.
That class and the class of 2012 were the best representations. Every year you find that, but those were just full of the performing arts people. They had really good sports people. They had those who were involved in volunteering, and they had stout academic credentials as well.
So what was your reaction? What was your reaction after the performance or during the performance?
I think I came very close to tears. I think I probably cried.
Tears? Mr. Greene?
Yes, I tried to hide it a little bit, but it was nice. It was really nice to see that they captured what the school was about, the essence of what I was trying to get out of Princess Margaret School.
What prompted them to celebrate you, especially at that time?
Well, I believe that group was very close to me.
Okay.
Over the years. Most of them are, but they were very close to me. And I think they just wanted to find a way to say thank you for the support that I would have given and the school would have given over the years. But it was a very touching movement. The dramatists, the dancers, the singers, it was absolutely fantastic.
That represents the PMS culture. Generally, we hear that youth despise authority and are unthankful. You are a no-nonsense person. That's what I generally hear about you. Yet, they celebrate you. It brings me to the point where I realize that students understand that even though you're authoritative, that you care about them, you love them, so it was easy to celebrate you?
Yeah, and I don't know that children don't like authority.
You don't know that?
No, I have found children want people to be in charge. They want people to make good decisions and to be stern about it.
And when we do, sometimes they make a huge fuss.
No, there's an element in education though. There's a term that is used that is part of the description of a good teacher or good administrator in education. I think the term is egalitarianism, which it means that children appreciate discipline as long as they feel that that discipline is fair.
Oh,
and it is distributed. So they value fairness. In fact, children is going to find something wrong with you if you don't do what you're supposed to do. Yeah, sometimes you overhear them, they think you don't hear them say, my principal is not a punk. He says, so meaning they don't think that you're going to be wimpy.
Yes.
Nobody wants
You're not going to compromise.
No. But they understand once the discipline is fair, once it's administered in a sense where they get a sense that you care about them and their future, it's going to be okay. And they tell you that all the time. So there's people, leaders who try to be friends with students and to accommodate foolishness don't get very far in the system. So I do not know that when we sit now, even as older men, when my colleagues and I get together to talk about school, what we celebrate is that the sense of authority and discipline that was done well. Yeah. We talk about the great Ruth Limerick, the Iron Lady, and her coming around the car. We talk about Cardinal King, the shadow, whose hand will come around or the shadow will come before we
We're going to be talking about memorable teachers in another segment, but I want to take you to the halls of the PMS school. As you travel those halls just about every school day, what are the emotions that you feel? Well,
for me, I always wanted to be a school principal, and I believe in a principle that is taken from business management really, but it's really applicable to school management. It's called management by moveabout, or management by walkabout. That the presence of a principal on a corridor does a lot of things. So you get a chance to integrate with, interact with students on a daily basis. You get a chance to know their names, their faces, and to call them, to ask a question, to commend them on work that you see that was good. And that makes the world of a difference. So in any one day at Princess Margaret School, I could speak to as high as 500 students. And in 2 days, I would speak to the entire school population. And the same way, I get an opportunity to see what the teachers are doing in the classroom, to speak to the ancillary staff, the cleaners, the groundsmen, because they're all critical to the running of the institution, to find out what their issues are, right? To inquire about how their children are doing, how is their family life, to ask a human question.
Yes.
All of that is important, to make a joke with the little ones and they make a joke with me. So all of that you take into stride, and they find that you're someone that you can speak to, but the elements of respect as the principal of the school has to be maintained, and has to be maintained at the highest standards. And for me, that's the way I run school, I manage school. I don't sit in my office until the end of the day, because that's when the paperwork is done.
What is the end of the day for you? Because you're at school long after the official closing
Our
time
day ends
at 1:30.
and my deputy principals are like that too. So we end up being there until 5 o'clock. And sometimes we're waiting for my wife. It might be 6, depending on what we're doing. But the work is fun. The work is enjoyable up until now. And it's work that needs to be done. So I have not been bored being a principal.
We have to forgive you, therefore, if when you arrive home, you just forget about school and forget about the students until the next morning, because you spend so much time with them. We'll forgive you.
Yes, if I do, but sometimes we don't.
You don't.
Because
You're still thinking about them.
I married someone who can appreciate that conversation. Okay. And there are things that children do that is inspiring to you, a story that you can relate to share
with your partner.
Sometimes there's a little joke that some child would have said to you.
Yes.
Even about yourself, that you can share and you laugh about. So the school itself becomes, I remember one time, I normally iron in the night in preparation for school. This night, I didn't for whatever reason. And when I got up the morning, electricity was off.
Oh, no.
And so the only shirt that I could find that didn't need ironing was a little tight. And I kind of knew I took a chance. And I remember from the time I reached the gate, this first little child said, "Hi, Mr. Greene, you look like you're working out." Next one say, you're rather tight today. So, and you take it in full stride. So when I went to General Assembly, I kindly explained to them what the issue was, what caused this, so that I don't get any more comments for the rest of the day, because so there are little things that goes through a day that get you cracking. But you're not going to bite them. You know what the situation is.
Yes.
I found it very funny.
I find it funny too.
And they could tease me about it.
Because you're working out, so all your muscles were popping in
all
your tight
that she was trying to tell me, my shirt was tight. Not tight, it was tight.
It was tight.
Yes, so there are elements that we talk about school. How I might speak about a child who I just found to be really, really intelligent. And I relate that over. So this little girl, I said, she's so diligent. We say she eat grass battle. She's so bright, so the glitter. And you're happy to take
a break. I'm coming back in the next segment. I knew that we were going to have a lot of excitement and fun on set tonight. The last time Mr. Greene was at the Paula Show several years ago, I actually rolled. It was so much fun. Thank you for staying with us. We'll be right back. What is your definition of education?
Well, education is the sum total of all your learning experiences. Whether that comes
academics?
No, a sum total of all your learning experiences. Whether that comes in all the experiences you have, where it starts from your home.
Sitting at your grandmother's.
All of that, or to the beach, whatever. It is a significant difference between education and schooling.
Yes.
Schooling is a part of your education, but education involves a lot more. So when we talk about school, we're talking about what is engraved in a curriculum as a field of knowledge and skills that are to be taught. But education encompasses all things that you would have
experienced from childhood.
From child, it includes
the rest of your life.
Physical, the skills, the spiritual, all of that is a part of your education.
So I have here, education is a process of facilitating learning or the acquisition of knowledge, skills, values, morals, beliefs, and habits. Traditionally, our culture is more concerned about academics, and the other factors of education are largely overlooked. Do you agree?
Well, I would say not necessarily our culture. I would say the bureaucratic system that we run school under is concerned about that, because our socialization takes place in a much broader space. And so, for instance, our socialization begins in the home. And our home encompasses quite a bit more than that. For instance, good parents are also concerned about the moral faculties that you have, and a sense of right and wrong, building a conscience. All that is a part of your education. However, school has been very focused on what people determine to be the academics. Because if you look back from a historical point of view of where we're coming from, Caribbean people, and perhaps rightfully so, always felt that education was going to be that foundation. Well, it's something we call an escalator.
Yes.
It is something that pulls you up from where you are to get you in another realm. And and to a great extent it has. And so we're still in that mode. But we also now have to be conscious of the paradigm shifts in society and other things that are of equal value that will propel our children along. So for instance, now, all of it can be what we used to consider to be extracurricular are no longer extracurricular. They're actually a part of the immersed in the system. So if you talk about sports, the performing arts, music is not a co-curricular thing. It's not an extracurricular thing. It's a solid part of the curriculum. And the creative industries, whether it's visual arts or the performing arts, is a big part of entrepreneurship and of making money.
Culinary skills.
All of those things that we took for granted. Schools have to respond in various ways to those things.
But not only the schools, but the
society
entire
generally.
Society and the education, the people who are the overseers of education. But I want to take you back possibly to your childhood and your community. We spoke about part of the education would be the lessons, the experiences from your home, your community. I want to know, what did the adults tell you, whether in your community or in your household, that has helped to shape your life?
Well, for me, I grew up spending a lot of time with my maternal grandmother. So even though my mom and my father were there, I had their influence.
The extended family.
Yeah. Her words was, if you're going to speak truth, then don't be afraid to speak your mind. If you're going to speak a lie, that's a different thing. And there was this idea that it don't matter where you are, if you have something to say, stand and say it. Back then, the ability to speak in public was something that I learned even before I got to school, to formal school, because down the road there was like Sunday school, and reciting was a part of what was done. So you had to learn to memorize things.
Yes.
And the whole family would want to hear how well you did.
Oh,
and
they
how
would
well
be
it did
proud.
when you came back would determine the size of your dinner maybe. And then people would give you things from the company because they were just impressed with those elements.
Yes.
And so you learned early that other people found success in the good things that you did.
People who invest in you.
A whole community.
Yes.
They liked that idea.
I loved recitation
and so it doesn't matter.
And otherwise.
It doesn't matter where I have been in the world. I have taken that with me, that I shouldn't be afraid to speak if I'm speaking truth. If I'm speaking truth. I remember in 1995, I was one of the youngest members at an international conference on education in Zimbabwe. A conference that had about 5,000 people. And I got up to speak. And are you going to speak? Yes, I got up to speak. I had, 7 minutes to speak, and about 3 minutes into the presentation, the entire conference rose in unanimous applause to a young little boy that came from Antigua. And for me, it was, at the time, my mom, my grandmother, who was resonating in my head, who had imbued in me that sense of confidence. The school that I went to, both in Willie Keys and in Pierce, where those skills were instilled in me, came full circle, and I felt good about that.
You were a debater?
Yes, I was captain of the debating team from since third form at Pierce.
And so Pierce would have won.
We have done well over the We have done well over the years. But you see, it's those things that resonate with me. They need to be honest. So you need to also be contented with what you have. So that having a good conscience, which determines how you're going to do what the difference between right and wrong, even when nobody was watching you. So it has to do with your audience was always your own conscience and God. And so therefore that has stuck with me for years.
For all of your
life.
And
there's a phrase that I use with my students now all the time to remind them of self-confidence. I like to say to them, listen, you need to say this, I'm not better than anybody, but nobody is better than me. And so there is a self-consciousness about you, that you have a space that you want, but you're not.
And you need to claim your space.
Yes, but you don't need to necessarily need to promote yourself beyond anybody else. And it's that moral code that has guided me through my whole life. And I try to pass it on to my children.
It sounds biblical, though.
Yes, because it is in a sense. And I was quoting a poem earlier with my wife from La Fontaine, which I normally recite for myself for my understanding of how education ought to be. And what he was saying, it was a parable about a plowman who was extolling the virtues of hard work and to value the good things from our cultural heritage. And he was saying, the plowman said, be careful, the plowman said, not to sell our inheritance, right? Because what he was saying, because a treasure lies within. So there are so many good things from our cultural background that we still need to hold on to.
But one good thing that I realize as I'm sitting here and listening to you is that storytelling has become such a huge phenomenon now. Everybody's talking about storytelling. But we, especially in the country, I find, we have been exposed to so much storytelling because our grandparents always had a story to tell. And this is part of the education in Africa, the storytelling and passing down stories from generation to generation.
Part of the experience of positive public appeal for speakers is that ability. I want to give you a story that I went back to one of the universities that I went to. I was one of the invited speakers. And after I was finished speaking, thunderous applause, there was this man that was running through the crowd trying to get me. Eventually, he stopped me. She was there. I was a little skeptical about what he wanted. He said he wanted me to speak at a conference in Austria. So I looked at him like, strange, I don't know you. you don't know me. How am I going to come to Austria with you? He says, my name is Dr. Whatever. And he says, to make sure you know I'm authentic, I'm going to speak to you through the management of the university and let them send invitation to you.
And it happened?
Yes, I went to Austria. Just the lady said to me, just what you were saying.
The storytelling.
What makes you attractive is that you speak through what they call narrative expressions, which is the same thing.
As storytelling.
As storytelling.
Yes.
It's a rhythm of speaking that Caribbean people have inherited that we can't throw anything. It's a pattern of teaching.
And as I sat here listening to you, I am of the view that I could just listen all night long, but then I realized, no, Paula, it's not a monologue. It's supposed to be a dialogue. So you have to. But you're an excellent storyteller. Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. Storytelling is huge in the world today. So if you want to be recognized as an excellent speaker, storytelling is something that you ought to try and improve upon. We'll be right back. Stay with us, please. Talking about lessons learned at the feet of our elders, I know that it's important for us to talk a little bit about discipline, not corporal punishment, but discipline, because when I hear about corporal punishment, I think of slavery and welts and open wounds. I think of abuse, but I love to talk about discipline because it is what has helped to shape us.
And I guess you're correct, because discipline is not a one-off of anything. It's a continuous pattern of behavior that help us to go in a particular direction. It's a part of training. And so it is difficult to speak about discipline in any one line.
That's
and
true.
So there are lots of people who want to confine discipline, whether it's in school or home, to corporal punishment. No.
That's it,
it's a lot. It's a lot more to it.
Yes.
And I don't know if we understand that we need to discipline our children to get a particular behavior as human beings when it's instilled. And that discipline is holistic in nature. And I think that's one of the things that we have to be very conscious of in our schools now. Because I think the modern thought patterns tend to frown on sound discipline that has made us who we are. And I think that's a very dangerous thing in our schools. Because I am very strong on the structures of Caribbean discipline patterns in our school, because I have been to the North Americas, I've been to the Europes, and I believe that we have a better structure and system of discipline.
A far better structure.
So therefore, I am an advocate for that. So I'll give you an example. The thing that the adult world is looking for, or employers and so on are looking for, they're looking for people who are committed. They're looking for people who are punctual.
People who are disciplined.
So technically, you're looking for people who are disciplined.
Yes.
They're people who can stick to task.
Yes.
And so now people say nothing should happen to you in our school settings. If you come to school late, we shouldn't instill coming early. So we just accept you coming any old how. But there's no way in the world that nobody's going to accept you coming any old how.
Into their workplace. Yeah. But even when you travel abroad and you attend university, you have to be on time.
But you're taking it further. You're taking it too far. In simple places of life. I remember some years ago, we used to have a system. If you came after party time at Princess Mark, we'd close the gates.
I remember that.
To process it. And then there was a big uproar.
Yes.
People were arguing, why the kids were outside. You're outside because you came late. And you had to wait to be processed. And I used to tell them in jest, I may remember you depending on what mood I'm in. So if my wife was giving me trouble, I'm in a bad mood, I may not remember you. And so therefore, you need not leave up yourself to how I am feeling. Nobody can deny you entrance if you're there early. And I remember speaking at a graduation ceremony, and ministers were there. And those kind of platforms, sometimes I just lose my head. So I was saying to the graduation class, they must recount the things that helped them to be successful graduate.
Yes.
So I tell them I wanted them to tell whoever the minister was how we run school. So
and
I
they
said,
spoke about
oh,
that?
no, I asked them, how do I run school? And the kids answered, like an airport, sir. And I said, come late. They said, gate closed. So that's the reality of life.
That's true.
Because you cannot be a principal unless you have slangs, you know. You have to have slangs. You have something to be appealing to them.
And that's true,
Yes.
and that's relevant because you arrive late, the aircraft, the door is closed.
They remember
you better
you.
rebook.
So if you spend your money on a plane ticket and reach late, they don't care.
They don't care.
You lose your
no
money.
refund.
So that what they say, my grandmother used to say what? Who don't hear will feel. Well, that's a reality of life. It is a reality of life. If you don't hear, it means that there are consequences to action.
And imagine we don't discipline our children and they become, you know,
they will
troublemakers.
They will discipline you.
And then the police discipline them. And we make a big fuss about it. But if we had only spent some time...
And we had better hope that the police is disciplined.
Well, exactly.
so it's a whole context. It's a common sense matter.
But there's this thing about natural consequences, and they occur without any enforcement from parents. So I was looking at the natural consequences, and I said, this world has gone mad. If your child won't eat, your child will feel hungry. If your child doesn't complete the homework, your child fails the assignment. If your child breaks a rule on the sporting field, your child gets sent off. What they're actually saying, allow natural consequences to be the discipline without parental enforcement. And I said, but basically what they're saying is don't train your children.
Well, I think you understand how ridiculous that sounds by just reading it.
Natural consequences.
Well, I'm assuming that all things happen naturally. And the point we're making, though, is that there is a serious need for us to value some of our patterns. There's some of us where university has made us kind of little stupid, for want of a better word. It is that generation that is creating the problem, you know.
The generation that would have been disciplined. The generation who would have benefited.
would have gone off
Yes.
and gone to university and need to come back and prove to us that they're wiser than our forefathers. So going to a university don't make you wiser than your mother. It just meant that you got an opportunity, right? Because I've met a lot of bright people who are wise who didn't go to any university because the situation didn't create that opportunity.
Those older people in my community.
So going to university don't make you wise. It means that you have completed a course of study in a particular area. Wisdom is far more embracing in a sense. So all these modern techniques, so even those people who are psychologists and so on, I like to tell them, you know, some of them have never taught in any school. And some of the people who were speaking, I said to them, you haven't visited the school since 1925. And my kids like to say hyperbole because it's an understanding.
Exaggerating.
Yeah, because meaning that you haven't been near to a school since in a long time.
In a long time, probably decades.
Nobody who studies a field of a study, whether it's English, history, geography, IT, whatever, can go and teach in an environment and let the children listen unless you can control that environment. You must be in control of that. And children must be focused on this. So you have to find a way to have them understand that they must sit and listen, rein them in. And if you can't do that, the opportunity for you to teach and for students to learn will never take place.
And for them to respect you.
Yes, so I tell people all the time, we believe that students come to school with books and bags, and you just go, no, students come to school with all kind of baggage.
All sorts of issues.
Some come with wonderful behaviors, but some come with drugs, some come with knives. Fortunately, these days, none come with guns. But if you're talking, they come with all kinds of things. So therefore, we have to be real.
Psychological, mental issues.
We have to be real.
Let me tell you, my mother, she had a combination of disciplinary actions. So of course we were spanked.
Every mother.
And in those days, let me tell you, we were abused because they would use broomstick, you're hiding beneath the bed, they're poking you out. I don't know that a lot of parents are doing that now. But anyway, I remember that at Easter, especially, I want to go to the beach because we had no transportation, no personal transportation. The bus is off to the beach with everybody in the community, the food, all my friends. And if my report states, talk too much, needs to settle down, and my average, my mother didn't bother about position. She was high on average. Because you can be first with 50.
Your mother was wise.
Yeah. So the bus is leaving the village, and I'm standing on our property feeling very sad and feeling that she's done me an injustice because I might not have done well at school. But please, just give me an opportunity to enjoy myself. Do you know those same disciplinary tactics or whatever you want to call them that she used, I use them for my children?
And it works for some?
It's successful for all my children.
Well, because if they had your temperament, if you were an antisocial person like me, it might not have worked. But for instance, my mom, I grew up in Willikies, and we spent...
So you didn't care to go to the beach? Your mother would have to use something else?
No, we went to the beach every day. That was our way of life.
Day.
And so the discipline was to try to prevent us from going to the beach. And so I remember one time my mother, before she went to work, she put away all my clothes, right? And that I wouldn't go to the beach, because every mother in the village that went to the beach had to have a strategy to prevent their sons, especially from going to the beach. Well, you'd have to kill us not to go, because we'd find a way. The only clothes that was left back was 2 brand new gabardine pants that my aunt had brought from St. Croix. And I sat down there in a fruit of the loom underwear brief and watched those new brand gabardine pants. And I watched it and watched it, and when I couldn't take it anymore, I pulled on a brand new gabardine pants and went to Long Bay. When I got to Long Bay, we hooked it on a tree, nice, and went into the water. We bathed all day. When I came back out, somebody up and stole the gabardine pants. So the only thing I had to go back, because it had tag and everything on it, so they knew it was a brand new pants. I had to walk by the bush in that fruit of the loom, and hoping that my mother didn't pay attention immediately to that gabardine pants, that it had gone missing. So different.
So did she ever find out? Mr. Greene, I told you not to make me laugh tonight.
She found out about a month after.
What you did?
And we just thought that the gabardine pants had gotten lost in the rest of the clothes in the house, but she never knew that.
Did you ever confess?
When my mom, when I grew up, we spent a lot of time talking.
And you confessed?
And we talked about all kinds of things. And no, she'd laugh and she'd say, you see you? So we understand. So for every little skill set,
yes,
it's a different, meaning you have to know the person.
Yes.
You have to know your children.
So the discipline can be applicable to that.
And the same way you have to come to know the children in your school.
Yes.
And so that whatever you're applying as discipline, it cannot be universal.
No. Yes,
what works for one,
to the situation.
Unique to the situation. And rules, though, are comprehensive. Rule govern everyone in the institution, but punishment and discipline vary depending on who you are dealing with.
Mr. Greene, you said that Antiguan children are too comfortable. What do you mean by that?
Some of the material things that we are able to give to our children have made them feel that they have arrived. And so when you and I grew up, that thing of seeing education as an escalator was foremounting our minds. Now, I think there's a general need for our students, from a point of view, to understand diligence. And that is setting high goals and expectations for themselves from a learning point of view. And so you're just so passionate about excelling at what you do that you're just willing to work hard to it. I think it's becoming a problem for us now that people make excuses for mediocrity. And so that self-motivation that we used to have is dwindling.
It's dwindling. So who should hold them accountable?
Well, it begins in the home. It begins in the home, or parents and so on should be the first element of accountability. And obviously the school that we attend must also hold them accountable to high standards and regulations. And it reflects back to the same discipline. Because I remember some years ago, I was doing a child, she had a little calculator, and she was calculating her grades. Yeah, because nobody was going to deny her the opportunity to be on the principal's list. And so anybody cheat out of a grade, no teacher was going to cheat out because she has already calculated a grade. I like that.
She was driven.
She was driven.
Succeed,
she had that success going there. She had portioned her time out to study and did it. I think we need to go back there. She wasn't going to be at a class late. And it wasn't because that there was going to be punishment, because she understood that if you got there late, you were going to miss something. And I think we have to speak that language to our children generally.
Every day.
Every day. We have to stick to them to abide by rules that govern institutions, because if you don't follow rules, you're excluded. And once you're excluded, learning opportunities are lost.
So there ought to be rules in the home.
There are rules in the home, there are rules in the schools. They can be a part of the rules that are made. In the modern theory tells you if you involve them, and I have no problem with that. I think it makes sense because you have buy-in to the rules. But I think Antigua needs to say to its children that you need to be diligent at the sensible things. Rather, if you ever listen to a lot of the talk shows, it becomes amazing how the conversation is always negative. Somebody's going to call on the radio to say, well, oh, the school rules said that my child's supposed to not braids. Oh, well, my child went to school with braids and they sent her home. But if the rules say that you're not supposed to have braids, what do you expect the school to do when you send them there, right? But you never hear them call to say, well, listen, I want to thank the school.
And you're charging a registration fee?
Huh?
You're charging a registration fee?
Well, we charge a registration fee.
But I've been hearing chatter that it's increased, it's too much, and people are not understanding what's the purpose for the registration fee.
Well, people never want to understand because they fully well understand what's the charge. The school gives you something, so therefore
you have to reciprocate. You have to,
it's not free. So if the school is going to give you a PE outfit, let's say shirt and PE pants and ID.
I used to pay for the sash at the Antigua
thank you.
Girls High School.
And if they're giving you ID, if they're giving you a crest, if they're giving you a belt, where is it going to drop from? Halachi? So therefore, I don't understand what people say. And so that is why I tell you, that is what I tell you, that the conversation
generally
is negative. Listen, my father worked in agriculture. My mom worked in the culinary arts at the time. I knew they were not rich people, right? I knew that they had it hard. But my parents had a way of saying they would suck salt.
And drink water.
Yeah, to let you, they didn't question that. So when I got a fourth form, and they sent us a book list before Board of Education and book scheme. You had to buy that book, and they will tell you that. They'll go to the lengths to buy it for you, but you need to understand that when they buy it, you better utilize it in the way. They never complained. They didn't have it. Yeah, so therefore there were times my mom would use cotton bonuses because we grew cotton, and the bonuses from the cotton crop would come in December, and they look forward to get that bonus to buy the things that their children needed. And it wasn't 1, 2 children.
So there was an expectation that after we would have sacrificed to get you the tools that you need, you have to fulfill purpose.
And there are 2 places that they just never questioned. School and church. And I felt there were times when school needed to be questioned. But
that's why we're questioning school now. Well, listen to this quote. If you really want to do something, you will find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. And that's by Jim Rohn. Someone said that the first world agenda that talks about rights and rights and rights, it's eroding the Caribbean culture that has been established.
And in some sense, it is true if we allow it to do that. Because rights come with responsibilities. There's nowhere in the world that you can acquire a right without having a particular set of responsibilities. And I don't fuss about people having rights because I do have rights.
Yes.
And nobody's going to erode mine. And so even with rules can be challenged, you know.
Yes.
But they must be challenged along the channels that give you an opportunity to challenge those rules. Nobody says that rules can't be challenged, and rules can change depending on the dynamics that surround you at a particular time.
Yes.
So if the rule don't make sense, after a while, you have to change it, you
Just
have to
like
amend
laws
it,
don't make
you have to
sense
amend it,
after a
you have to
while,
amend it, there's nothing wrong with that. But you cannot have a right that gives people to do whatever they feel, right? There must be some sense of balance. And the first world, in many respects, have gone crazy on this thing that rights that we used to think as common sense. So I really don't delve in the philosophical thinking that they have, because I understand it's a common place of justice. You understand what is just, you understand what is fair, And you understand what is your responsibility. So my responsibility as a father is to raise my children. Yeah, because that's a God-given responsibility.
Yes.
Yes, so even in a society where mothers play that role, really and truly, the biblical responsibility for the upbringing of children rests with fathers, you know. And well, definitely it rests with family, but the Bible says it gives that responsibility to the fathers. Obviously, we're going to do it in collaboration with one another. So I don't take that lightly. And it also says, who the father love, he chasteneth, because you can't love them to death. Because some people love people to death, meaning literally love them to death. And they only know that they have loved them to death when they die. And so what we're saying, this rights agenda, when you listen to the people who advocate it, sometimes they don't make sense. But then, hey, who pay the piper calls the tune. So I'm not really fascinated, but children understand when there's fairness and when something's
They understand the boundaries.
Of course they do.
And sometimes they push the boundaries.
And if you
they don't expect to reach beyond the boundaries. But then when we as adults, we compromise.
And I can give you a million.
They're very surprised. They say, what?
I can give you a million.
I can't believe she didn't challenge this.
And I can give you a million stories about that. I used to drive in town in the mornings before 8 to see how my students... Yeah, so I used to drive around to see how the students come into school. And this morning there was this particular student, let's call her C. They used to call her Cookie, right? And I saw Cookie in a skirt, but this short. But by the time I drove up Market Street, Cookie had already gone through Bank Alley. So I pull around up Newgate Street to cut off Cookie before she got into the gate. When I drove around there by public way, Cookie had already passed me. When I got to the gate, Cookie was already in the school going down. So I went to look for the class. I know I was going to catch Cookie with the skirt. So, so when I said to Cookie, come here. When Cookie stood up, Cookie's skirt was down there. It's like a miracle.
Cookie's skirt grew.
Cookie understood one skirt for the road, one skirt for Greene. So however she had it up, when I saw her, she was in full conformity with the school rules. So I get how they don't know boundaries. And they understood what the school was saying. And they understand that they play the game. Sometimes they win. Sometimes they lose. But they understand. They understand.
Thank you for staying with us on the Paula Show. I'm trying to keep this makeup intact tonight, but I think I'll have to do a refresher. Mr. Greene does this to me all the time. We'll be right back on the Paula Show. Stay with us, please. I need lots of energy tonight. Pray for me, please. You said that all interests, talents, and skills can become a field of study. How do you and your team guide them to their best fit?
Well, the way how our schools are set up, our education system is broad at the bottom, narrow at the top. So that means that all children are exposed to all things at the bottom.
Yes.
And so as you grow, we can measure aptitude. You begin to see what students are good at. And the schools have become a little bit more sophisticated. Now we have guidance counselors who also provide assistance in terms of plotting aptitude to career possible choices.
So it might not be the best fit for science.
No, so but here's the problem sometimes. You as the mom wanted a doctor. So you're hell-bent that your son should be a doctor. But in the sciences, he's scoring 28 and 30.
No, he's not passing.
Yeah, but you still want him to be a doctor. But he's
doctor.
Well, I must be witch doctor, because it's not going to be.
I think sometimes parents live vicariously through their children.
And so you're trying to tell them the aptitude is in somewhere else. Child might be, for want of might be a brilliant artist.
Yes.
Might be gifted as a musician, might be a skilled person in a vocational area.
But from a doctor to now
so
telling
me that he's going to, well, maybe he might want to go into engineering.
Well, even that.
And by the way, they make more money than doctors.
Exactly.
But the point is, schools now could go through that kind of counseling to tell you what the aptitudes are, because every one of us have strong aptitudes. And we have what Gardner refers to as multiple intelligences. That meaning you're bright in one area don't mean that you're bright in all. And I experienced that when I was a first farmer in school. And I think I was a little ahead of my time, but people just called that rude. Let me explain to you what I mean. When I went to school, the policy was that all boys went to industrial arts and all girls went to home ec. Well, I was I was happy to go to industrial arts because that's where boys went.
Yes.
But only when I went to industrial arts, I found out that I just couldn't do industrial arts. I could tell you how to cut the wood, but every time I went to cut it, it never cut the way I'm supposed to cut it. So I was in a class where the teachers gave you 15 bonus points before the exam start, and I would have lost all of my bonus points before we even played.
So you have to work harder in other areas?
No, it doesn't matter how hard I worked, I just couldn't get it right. So at technical join, I would put the T-square and my paper looked straight. But only when the teacher come, my line was twisted. I just couldn't get it straight. So I went to the principal to say, listen, I think I need to do homework because I'm not making it in this higher class. On the other end, what happened, I was getting 90s and 80s in this traditional subject, but I was getting small grades down there. I became very embarrassed. The woman told me, well, you're going to stay, we have to stay, because the boys go industrial arts. So I started giving a lot of problems in industrial arts so that it could be said that the reason why I was failing was because I was being troublesome rather than I just couldn't do it.
Right.
Right? So I didn't have the aptitude.
So they switched you?
Never. But no, but no, that is commonplace. Children get a choice to do the subjects that they're good at.
Teachers have a huge responsibility.
Yes, we had a rule at Princess Margaret says that for you to do the single sciences in fourth, you must have done them, you must have chosen them in third.
Right.
And this young man came to me in fourth and said, sir, I think I want to switch over to the sciences. I asked him, why? He said, I think I want to be a doctor.
Wow.
But you didn't do the sciences in third form. He said, no, sir, but if you give me a chance, I'm going to work hard. Well, I can't lose by giving him a chance. So I did.
And he did well?
The biology teacher came to me and said, this boy has a science brain.
Wow. He was just a little bit delayed. Maybe
just change his mind.
Yes.
He's a medical doctor today. I know 2 years ago, there's this young lady, she was doing 10 subjects, and asked, what do you want to do? Very mouthy, chirpy. She wants to be a lawyer, but them subjects you're doing that guide you down to us, so we need to change. So I called the mom and said, we need to change it. But it's already up in the phone and she said, the child bright enough to do the subject and change. You don't bother me. She said, okay, it's your child, whatever y'all do, y'all do. So she switched over. She graduated valedictorian. She tells me now she is in pre-law in university.
Very often we speak about academics, but what about those skills that can strengthen the academics?
To educate a man in mind and not in manners is to educate a menace to society. Meaning, those same skill sets. So children have to learn that it is okay to pass and tell you good morning and say good morning, sir.
And thank you
and
please.
Thank you and excuse me, please.
Excuse me,
and
please,
all of that is just a part of the same social skills that the world requires. And these days, everybody has a project to teach something. You don't need to have a project to teach life. It's a daily thing.
Yes.
As a part of the culture and the structure that you'd want. I used to tell them all the time, make me feel good because I just checked my wallet and I did not see any money in it. There must be some justification for me to come here. So every time you say, hi, sir, oh my, I feel good. Ask me how I'm doing. So when you say, hi, sir, you can't just say, hi, sir. I say, hi, sir, how are you doing today? It's because I need to tell you, you need to ask me about my wife. How is your wife doing? Is she treating you well? Because how she is treating me might depend on how I treat you. Because if she's treating me well, then I'm going to treat you. If she's not treating me well, I can't do anything to her because the law will lock me up and call it domestic abuse. I might be able to legally do something to you. so what you would find on a given day when I chat them foolishness with children, they would pass and say, hi, sir. I say, hi, how's the madam doing? I say, loving her as usual, loving her as usual. Any new songs? I say, every day I do another one. And say they see it as what? As human. But those same elements that we are talking about are the common elements that
prevents... And that would be called relationship management.
So we now they take you to a whole school to learn just that.
Yes,
and
that's true.
If everybody has 10 CXCs, everybody has a university degree, there is something else that is going to make you a little bit more marketable than the other person. And just being pleasant, just having those social skills, are absolutely necessary.
And people do notice. I have a girlfriend, and sometimes we walk, you know, just exercise. I was a part of a group, and for years we would walk and we'd run together. And she said to me, sometime afterwards, "You love people." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "We pass and we say, 'Hi, good morning,' and we leave it at that. Some people even pass and don't say anything." She said, "You always ask, 'How are you?' And she said to me, 'You wait for a response.'" And she noticed that. And it became habitual to me. So it wasn't a big deal for me. But somebody noticed. So I'm saying.
And you don't know who know you. So
And
sometimes I'm in the supermarket, I see somebody and I say, "Hi, good morning." I don't know the person. So I just say good morning or good afternoon, but the person answers me, "Oh, hi, Mr. Greene." It means that the person knows me.
Yes.
So if I am now here preaching that we should be cordial and have those skills, and then I walk past them, what are they going to see me as?
Hypocrite.
But what we say to you, Paul, our societies were built like that a long time ago.
Of course.
If I were to pass my elders without saying something, there was a penalty.
Boy.
There was a penalty for that.
I used to feel
And
very annoyed that I had to call them multiple times.
The reputation of your parents was on the line because they identified you by your parents. You didn't have a name, you know. So it was the boy for girly.
And the boy, the black one for Milani.
And the last one for Samuel. And that's how it was. So if your parents didn't do a good job of raising you, we had a problem. The reputation was on the line.
Indeed.
But up to this day in my village, it is like that. And there is no greater feeling than to be appreciated. So they know you and they assert certain qualities.
But I used to be annoyed. I did it. But I was annoyed because I felt that sometimes the adults could reach out and say hello to you. You pass them 15, 20 times. You have to be saying hello 15, 20 times. And they deliberately sit there and wait for you to do it. And if you don't, you're in big trouble.
But I still feel that.
I mean, it's crazy.
I still feel that, and some adults do. Some adults would, depending on the people, would give it a greeting.
Time has evolved, so adults are now saying
But what
hello.
we were talking about are the same social skills that will help you to be, it's a part of what people refer to as networking. How pleasant you are may decide whether people want to be among you. And today's world, networking is a big thing. So what I'm saying, when I mentioned to you earlier, the poem that I quote, right, that the treasure lies within. Not to, you don't throw the baby with the bathwater. There's certain things within our cultural construct.
Don't move the yardstick.
You don't need to, some things you need to move, but no, you don't need to, because they are good things.
Yes.
They are good things.
Thank you very much for coming to our first part of the Paula Show tonight. We have a part 2 coming up, and it's going to be equally exciting. Thank you very much for staying with us for part 1 of my conversation with Dr. Colin Greene, the principal of the Princess Margaret Secondary School. Join us next week, Tuesday evening, for part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Colin Greene. I know that you've learned so much that can help to transform the behavior in your family, in your church, in your community, in the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. Have a good evening. Goodbye.